Validation. I'm sitting at the table in my apartment, looking out the window. I turn back to the papers stacked in front of me. Interesting, I say. Very interesting. I glance over the test scores again, the pre-test numbers, the post-test numbers, and the amount each student improved. Good, good, I say, as I notice that all of the students improved over the course of the semester. All the post-test scores are higher than the pre-test scores. Most students improved by a couple of points, but my eyes are drawn to two sets of numbers, two names, Kyoung and Jin. These two students improved dramatically more than all of the others. Their post-test scores show a big jump. What did they do differently, I ask myself. At the final class, I asked them. Since all of the students had the same in-class experience, I focus on what they did outside of class. Most students followed traditional study methods. They studied textbooks. They used vocabulary books. They went to traditional English classes. But Kyoung and Jin followed a different approach. In fact, they actually followed the method I continually harangued the class about. They focused on repeated listening and reading for fun. Both students said they took my advice seriously and therefore listened to English podcasts and audio articles 1 to 2 hours every day. Kyoung joined The Linguist and faithfully uses their system. Both students also read for fun, mostly easy materials such as National Geographic for kids, adolescent novels, etc. In TESOL, teaching English to speakers of other languages, jargon, these two exceptional students followed an input-based approach. The bulk of their study time was spent reading and listening to understandable and interesting English materials. Most students in schools follow an analysis-based approach. The bulk of their time is spent analyzing the language, breaking it apart, memorizing grammar rules, and doing drills. Plenty of research shows that input-based methods are faster and more effective than analysis-based methods. I knew this, which is why I always nag and cajole my students to focus on comprehensible input. But it was still thrilling to see this knowledge illustrated quantitatively in such dramatic fashion by my own students. The truly interesting part is that the pre- and post-test I gave them, the Michigan test, measures listening, vocabulary, and grammar. I'm not surprised that Kyoung and Jin improved their listening skill. But that section was only 20% of the test. The remaining 80% tested both vocabulary and grammar. In other words, their vocabulary improved dramatically faster than the students who specifically studied vocabulary books and lists. Their grammar improved dramatically faster than the students who specifically studied grammar textbooks. This is not an isolated incident. Many research studies replicate these findings. See www.sdcrashin.com for the most thorough summary of these. In study after study, input-based approaches beat analysis-based approaches as measured by general English tests such as the TOEFL, TOEIC, or Michigan tests. These tests measure vocabulary, grammar, listening, and in some cases, speaking and writing. Though I'm aware of this research, I've never seen this phenomenon so starkly illustrated in person in a quantitative way, mostly because I've never had the opportunity to pre- and post-test my students. These results are a small but powerful validation of my own teaching approach and the methods I continually exhort my students to follow. I will now carry this plea to you. Do not analyze English. Do not use analysis-based methods. Do not rely on textbooks. Do not focus on grammar rules. Use an input-based method. Listen to understandable English. Listen repeatedly. Listen 1 hour every day, and listen every day. And read. Read a lot. But don't read textbooks. Read easy materials that are fun and interesting to you. Many students, for some reason, don't follow my advice. But those who do, such as Kyoung and Jin, improve much more quickly than those who don't. Follow this method, and you too will improve faster, just like Kyoung and Jin. Okay, welcome to the vocabulary lesson for the validation article. Let's get started. I'm not going to do all of the vocabulary, just some of the more frequent or more difficult words. Okay, in the beginning here, I use the phrase glance over. I'm narrating, I say, I glance over the test scores again. To glance over something is to look at it very quickly. Usually you would say, I glanced over the test, I glanced over the article, I glanced over the letter. To glance is to look at something very quickly and then look away again. Okay? Next, I use the phrase drawn to in the next paragraph. I say, my eyes are drawn to two sets of numbers, two names. To be drawn to something means to be attracted to it. It means there's something about it, makes you want to look at it. Makes you want to get closer to it. So drawn to means attracted to. All right. A little bit later, a couple paragraphs later, I use the word harangued. Harangue is a verb, to harangue. And in the sentence I say that my students actually followed the method I continually harangued the class about. So I was always haranguing my class about using input-based methods. And to harangue it's similar to the word nag, which we'll discuss later, but it means to say something again and again and again. It means you want someone to do something, and maybe they don't do it, so you tell them again and again and again. So I would harangue my class about using these methods. I would say, you need to listen to English every day. You need to listen to English every day. You need to listen to English every day. I'm trying to convince them. I'm trying to persuade them, and so I repeatedly tell them to do this again and again and again. That's called haranguing, or the verb is to harangue. All right, and then a little bit later in that paragraph, I use the adverb faithfully. I mentioned that one of these students, Kyoung, joined the linguist and that she faithfully uses their system. To faithfully do something is to do it with a strong belief, with strong confidence. So you're not just doing it because someone tells you to do it. You're not just doing it with half an effort or with just a little bit of effort. It means you really believe what you're doing. You think it's a good thing, and you really, really, really want to do it. So that's faithfully. So Kyoung faithfully follows the linguist system. She's following it because she really believes it will work. And it does. All right, and then in that same paragraph, the next sentence, as a matter of fact, I mentioned that both students also read for fun, and that they mostly read easy materials, such as National Geographic for Kids, or adolescent novels. Adolescent is a certain age. It's the age before teenager. So teenagers, we usually say 15-year-old, 16, 17, 18, 19. We describe people that age as teenagers. But people who are children, who are about 11, 12, 13, 14, in that age, that middle school age, we call them adolescents. Adolescents. So an adolescent novel is a novel, a book. It's a book for children that age. So my students, even though these are graduate students, actually, they are reading books that are for middle school children, adolescent children. All right, in the next paragraph, I used the word jargon. I said, in TESOL jargon, these two students followed an input-based approach. Jargon, it means special vocabulary. It's special vocabulary for a certain job or a certain business or a certain field. For example, biology has certain jargon. Biologists know this vocabulary. Other people don't. Well, teachers also have jargon. In TESOL, which is teaching English to speakers of other languages, teaching English as a foreign language, teachers who do that, we have kind of a special vocabulary too. And so input-based approach, that's a kind of vocabulary that we use. Most English teachers understand what that means, but maybe people who are not English teachers don't know that. So jargon, it's the special vocabulary of a field or a certain job. Alrighty. Exceptional, of course, means special, amazing, great. All right, in that same next paragraph, I mentioned the bulk of their study time was spent reading and listening to understandable and interesting English materials. The bulk of means most of. So the bulk of their study time was spent reading and listening. Most of their study time was spent reading and listening. So the bulk of means most of. Alrighty then. Then on to the next page of the learning guide. You'll see a couple of similar words here. First is the word nag. I say, I always nag and cajole my students to focus on comprehensible input. To nag is quite similar to harangue, which I just told you about. If you nag someone, you tell them to do something again and again and again, usually because they're not doing it. The best example is a mother and her children. My mom would nag me about cleaning my room. AJ, clean your room. And I'd say, okay, Mom, okay. But I didn't do it. So then she would tell me again a few minutes later, AJ, clean your room. And a couple minutes later, AJ, clean your room. And then again, AJ, clean your room. AJ, clean your room. So she's nagging me, right? It's kind of like complaining again and again and again and again about something. And then in that same phrase, I use the word cajole, to cajole. Cajole means, again, to try to persuade someone. It's the idea of almost trying to push them to do something. So you're trying to convince them. You're begging them. Maybe you're pushing them a little bit. Do this, do this, do this, and you're trying to change their mind about something. That's cajole. So there's a little bit similar meaning there. Nag and cajole. And comprehensible input means understandable input. So what you have to listen to something you understand. If you don't understand it, you won't learn anything. You need to understand about 90% of it. So that's comprehensible. All right. In that same paragraph, you see the word quantitatively. That's a nice long word. I say, it was thrilling to see this knowledge illustrated quantitatively. Thrilling, of course, means exciting. Illustrated means shown, or sometimes it means proven. But quantitatively means with numbers, or numerically. It's another way to say that. So I knew that these methods were better, but in my own experience, in my own classes, I had never done like a pre-test and post-test research to show with numbers that this method is better. So this was my first chance to see with numbers in person with my own classroom, my own students. All right, in the same sentence, as a matter of fact, I used the phrase dramatic fashion, in dramatic fashion. It was exciting to see this knowledge illustrated quantitatively in such dramatic fashion. In dramatic fashion means in a strong way, in a powerful way, in a very noticeable way, something that everybody sees and notices. Easy to notice it, very powerful. So in a powerful way, in dramatic fashion. Alrighty, moving on then. I use the word replicate, skipping a paragraph here. I say many research studies replicate these findings. So I said this is not an isolated incident. An isolated incident means a special experience, something that doesn't usually happen. But this is not an isolated incident. This is a common incident. It's something that happens a lot. Many research studies find the same results. And I mentioned many research studies replicate these findings. Findings means results. Replicate means repeat or copy. And sometimes it can have both meanings together, to repeat and copy. So many research studies replicate these same results. They repeat these same results. When they study and compare input-based methods and analysis-based methods, the input-based methods always win, or 99% of the time. Okay, and then in the next paragraph, you'll see the word starkly. I say, I have never seen this phenomenon so starkly illustrated in person in a quantitative way. Starkly means in a strong and obvious way, in a strong and powerful way. So it's an adverb. Okay, in a strong, powerful way that's very obvious. Starkly also has the idea of obvious. Everyone sees it. And then I mentioned in a quantitative way. So the opposite, not the opposite, but another way, another kind of knowledge or proof is qualitative. Qualitative, well, there's an L in there. Qualitative means without numbers. So I have a lot of qualitative experiences. I can observe my students. I see that certain students usually do better. It's the ones who follow the input-based methods. But this time I have a quantitative proof. In other words, I have numbers, test scores, to prove what's happening. Okay, in the next paragraph, we use the word validation, which is also the title of this article. Say, these results are a small but powerful validation of my own teaching approach. Validation is proof or evidence that proves something is correct. So it means positive proof or positive evidence. It's something that proves you are correct or something is correct. In this case, my two students who improved so much faster, they are validation for my teaching methods or for input-based methods, not just my methods. Anyone can use these methods. In the same paragraph, I use the verb exhort. I say, and the methods I continually exhort my students to follow. Exhort is, again, has the idea of trying to persuade, trying to convince, trying to even sell. Okay, I exhort my students to follow an input-based methods. So it means I'm trying to convince my students. I tell them very strongly, you should do this. That's exhorting. All right. In the next paragraph, we see the word plea. I say, I now carry this plea to you. I now bring this plea to you. A plea is a request. It means I'm asking you to do something. A plea is actually a very strong request. So I'm saying, please, please, please do this. Please use an input-based method. Please don't analyze English. That is my plea. That is my strong request. And finally, at the end, you'll see the phrase rely on. Do not rely on textbooks. To rely on something is to depend on it. It's to use it too much. So do not use textbooks too much. Do not rely on textbooks. Do not depend on textbooks. Textbooks are not very good. Okay, that's it for today's vocabulary lesson for the validation podcast. Okay, and now for the mini story for the validation article. This story will help you remember some of the new vocabulary from the article. Let's get started. There was once a guy named Bill. Though Bill was 45 years old, he acted like an adolescent. Bill loved to read comic books. He loved to ride his bike. And he always acted nervous around women. Bill lived with his parents. His mom still nagged him every day. Clean your room, Bill, she would say, and do your laundry. One day, Bill saw a girl named Beatrix. He was immediately drawn to her. He giggled and laughed when she was near. Beatrix was starkly different than Bill. She was very mature. She was independent. She lived alone. Bill didn't know what to do. He wanted a date, but was afraid to ask Beatrix out. He felt immature next to her. But, he thought, if she goes on a date with me, it will be validation that I'm attractive and interesting and cool. Bill decided to ask out Beatrix in dramatic fashion. He bought 500 roses and had them delivered to her house. He dressed in an orange suit, went to her house, and knocked on the door. When she answered, Bill said, I love you! I will faithfully take care of you all my life. No one will love you like I do. No one can replicate my feelings. Beatrix was shocked. She yelled, Go away, loser! But Bill wouldn't leave. Beatrix yelled again, Go away! But still, Bill wouldn't go. Beatrix cajoled him. Go away, or I will call the police. Then she closed the door. But Bill would not leave. He's still sitting in front of her front door right now. So now, Beatrix must always use the back door. The end. All right, one more time with some questions. As I say the questions, try to quickly answer them in your head. You can even shout them out if you want to. This just helps you remember the vocabulary a little bit better. Let's start from the beginning. There was once a guy named Bill. Though Bill was 45 years old, he acted like an adolescent. Was Bill mature? No, he wasn't. He acted like an adolescent. Did Bill act like a young kid, like a middle school kid? Yes, he did. How old did he act like he was? Well, he acted like he was an adolescent, like a middle school boy. Bill acted like an adolescent, not like a teenager, not like a small child, not like an adult. He acted like an adolescent. And he loved to do adolescent things. Bill loved to read comic books. He loved to ride his bike. And he was always nervous around women. Bill lived with his parents, just like an adolescent. His mom still nagged him every day. Was his mom sweet and friendly every day? No, she wasn't. Did his mom bother him every day? Yes, kind of. What did she do? She nagged him. She asked him to do the same thing again and again and again. What did she nag him about? Did she nag him about doing the dishes? Do the dishes, do the dishes. No, she didn't nag him about the dishes. Did she nag him about cutting the grass? No, she did not nag him about cutting the grass. What did she nag him about? She nagged him every day about cleaning his room and doing the laundry. She would nag him and say, "Bill, clean your room. Bill, clean your room. Bill, I told you, clean your room now." She would nag him every day about cleaning the room and doing laundry. One day, Bill's life changed. He saw a beautiful girl, a beautiful woman, named Beatrix. Was Beatrix an adolescent? No, she wasn't. Did she act like an adolescent? No, she didn't. She was a very mature person. How did Bill feel when he saw Beatrix? Was he attracted to her? Yes, very attracted to her. He was drawn to her. He felt pulled to her. Bill felt drawn to Beatrix. Did he love her? Yes, actually he did love her. He was drawn to her, he was attracted to her, and actually he loved her too. But he giggled and laughed when she was near, because he's kind of an adolescent. All right, Beatrix was starkly different than Bill. Was she a little bit different than Bill? No, she was very, very different than Bill. Was it easy to see that they were different? Was it obvious? Yes, of course, it was obvious. They were starkly different. Not just a little bit different. They were starkly different. Very, very different. Different in an obvious way. So Beatrix was starkly different than Bill. She was very mature. She was independent. She lived alone. She did not act like an adolescent. She was starkly different. She was very mature. Bill didn't know what to do. He wanted a date, but he was afraid to ask Beatrix out. He felt very immature next to her because they were so starkly different. But he thought, if she goes on a date with me, it will be validation that I'm attractive and cool. So why did he want this date with her? Did he want a date because it would make him feel stupid? No. Would it prove something if she accepted a date? If she said yes? Yes, it would prove something. What would it prove? Well, it would be validation that he was attractive and cool. Bill needed validation. He needed proof that he was attractive and cool. So if Beatrix accepted his date, if she said yes, it would be validation. It would be proof that he was attractive and cool. Bill decided to ask Beatrix out in a dramatic way, in dramatic fashion. Did Bill do something small? No. Did Bill do something normal? No. Did he ask her out in a calm way? No. He asked her out in dramatic fashion, in a very powerful way, a very big, obvious, powerful way. Bill asked out Beatrix in dramatic fashion. He bought 500 roses and had them delivered to her house. He dressed in an orange suit. and he went to her house and he knocked on her door. When she answered, Bill said, "I love you. I will faithfully take care of you all my life." Would Bill take care of her in a casual way? No. How would he take care of her? He would take care of her faithfully. Would he believe in her? Yes, he would. Would he always believe in her? Yes, he would. Would he feel confident about taking care of her? Yes, he would. Would he feel really in love and really dedicated, really serious about taking care of her? Yes, he would faithfully take care of her in all situations, at all times. He would faithfully take care of her. He said, "No one will love you like I do. No one can replicate my feelings." Could someone else copy the way he felt? No, they couldn't. No one could replicate his feelings. Could someone else pretend to feel like him? No, no one could replicate his feelings. Only he felt this way. Only he would be totally faithful. So no one could replicate his feelings. No one could replicate his actions. He and he alone could feel this way and act this way. But Beatrix didn't like him. He had an ugly orange suit and he looked like a loser because he looked like an adolescent kid. So Beatrix yelled, "Go away, loser!" Did Bill leave? No, he didn't. So she yelled again, "Go away!" But still, Bill wouldn't go. Finally, Beatrix cajoled him. "Go away, or I will call the police." Was Beatrix friendly? No, she wasn't. Did she politely ask him? No, did she not? She did not politely ask him. She cajoled him. Did she ask him many times? That's right. Yes, she did. She asked him many times. She cajoled him again and again. She tried to push him. She tried to force him. She tried to scare him. She cajoled him. "Go away now, or I will call the police." Did Beatrix cajoling, did it work? Was it successful? No. She tried to cajole him, but after she closed the door, Bill stayed there. Bill did not leave. He was not cajoled. In fact, Bill is still sitting there now. He's still in front of the door right now. He will be there all his life. And so now, Beatrix must always use her back door. Okay, one more time quickly, without questions, and that's it. There was once a guy named Bill. Though Bill was 45 years old, he acted like an adolescent, like a young kid. 12, 13-year-old kid. Bill loved to read comic books. He loved to ride his bike. And he always acted nervous around women. Bill lived with his parents. His mom still nagged him every day. "Clean your room, Bill. Clean your room, Bill. Bill, I said clean your room." She would also nag him about laundry. "Bill, do your laundry. Bill, I told you, do your laundry. Have you done your laundry yet? Do your laundry." Always nagging. One day Bill saw a woman named Beatrix. He was immediately drawn to her, strongly attracted to her. He giggled and laughed when she was near. Was Beatrix the same as him? I'm afraid not, no. Beatrix was starkly different than Bill. Obviously different than Bill. Very starkly different. She was very mature. She was independent. She lived alone. Bill didn't know what to do. He wanted a date, but was afraid to ask Beatrix out. He felt immature next to her. But he thought, if she goes on a date with me, it will be validation that I'm attractive and cool. If she says yes, it will be proof. It will be validation that I'm a cool guy. Bill decided to ask out Beatrix in dramatic fashion. Not in a calm way, not in a normal way. In dramatic fashion. He bought 500 roses and had them delivered to her house. He dressed in an orange suit, went to her house, and knocked on the door. When she answered, Bill said, "I love you! I will faithfully take care of you all my life." He would love to take care of her. He would faithfully take care of her all his life. "No one will love you like I do. No one can replicate my feelings. No one can copy my feelings. No one can replicate them." Beatrix was shocked. She yelled, "Go away, loser." But Bill wouldn't leave. Beatrix yelled again, "Go away." Bill still wouldn't go. Beatrix became angry. She tried to cajole him, tried to force him and push him and persuade him. Beatrix cajoled him, "Go away, or I will call the police." Then she closed the door. But Bill would not leave. He's still sitting in front of her door right now. As a result, Beatrix must always use her back door. Okay, that is the end of the mini story for the validation article. I suggest now, after you listen a few times, stop this audio, stop your iPod, try to tell this story yourself. Say it out loud when you're alone. Try to tell this story yourself using the new vocabulary. See if you can remember it and see if you can use it correctly.